District for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman Latta. As we've all heard today, AM radio continues to be important. It offers a broad range of programming, and essential emergency announcements are transmitted classically on the AM bands. Given the long wavelength of AM radio, we can hear from stations hundreds of miles away, which makes this an ideal form of communications in emergencies. I'm aware that technology innovations bring changes to the status quo, and we now have FM and satellite radio and internet, et cetera, but when the prominent lines of communications fail, when individuals can't access the internet, or when there's a natural disaster, AM radio is the last resort. For the life of me, I'm not sure why we're discussing getting rid of that at this particular juncture. I have a few questions for you. Colonel DeMace, thank you for your time with the panel today. With your background as a Deputy Director of Emergency Management and many previous roles in this field, I think you know the importance of effective communications during emergencies. And Mr. Chapman, your experience in broadcasting is certainly germane as well. In the Florida Panhandle, we suffered a Category 5 hurricane that seriously impacted our lives and our communications. We literally lost all cell phones, landlines, internet, and even our police radio repeaters for nearly 2 weeks. What we didn't lose was AM radio. So with the potential removal of AM radios from most of the major automobile manufacturers, do you think FEMA will be able to communicate effectively with individuals during disasters?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. As you mentioned, the redundancy that we have built within the integrated public alert and warning system relies upon the AM radio as its most reliable form of communication during those critical moments when those high winds and other factors can destroy the actual cellular infrastructure or other means of communication with which we have to communicate with the public during a crisis. So I think FEMA recognizes,
They recognize the
behalf,
importance.
that it's incredibly important to
Mr. Chapman, same question.
Congressman, thank you. I believe that there's all kinds of redundancies that are built into the EAS system. That's why it works well. But for the reasons that we've pointed out, AM sits at the very beginning of the chain. The AM stations are far superior to the other mechanisms in the emergency alert system to start it. It's why we chose for 75% of the primary entry point stations to be AM radio stations.
That sounds like a strong affirmation. And Mr. Schmidt, do you have a feeling how much it costs to put an AM radio in a car?
No, I don't have an actual cost for an AM radio. Again, it probably varies between individual manufacturers, and those are proprietary and closely held. But again, we are committed to providing the alerts across the full spectrum of the iPause system, and we also provide just a vast offer of choices for our manufacturers. And oh, by the way, there's still 99% of vehicles on the road today that have AM radio. So we will have AM radio for quite a while as we look at the future and see what makes sense in terms of the iPause system and FEMA's approach. Thank you.
So I guess I'll close on this note. There are 82 million Americans listening to AM radio, and there are 2 million Americans driving electric vehicles. I think it's a pretty obvious thing to leave the AM radios alone. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back.